Good morning. It's 9:33 a.m. on April 2nd, 2021. There's much to do today. And as I said yesterday, depending upon how expeditiously people moved, that would have a very defining element to today's events. Well, we are where we are. And the first thing I need to do is I need to address what I understand to be a very important matter from one of my constituents. It's a local business owner here in Texas, happens to be incorporated in another state within the United States. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing illegal about that. A lot of people do that. It does, however, bring up concerns regarding taxation, including potentially double taxation and or other matters that may have an impact on interstate commerce. But what I'm more concerned with is the fact that this person has repeatedly attempted to get attention drawn to the fact that her assets have been illegally expropriated, have been abused by people, up to and including people attempting to use the cover of sovereign immunity in order to justify whatever it is they're doing with it, and has been engaged recently in a very extortionate act of tax fraud that makes sense, but it's very difficult for one to understand unless we actually address the matters at hand. Please note, I am on the record as having said that elements of the existing comptroller code in the state of Texas should qualify as hate crimes, including in the manners in which they are hateful and unconstitutional against people from Northern Ireland, as well as people of Jewish descent and or people who identify as Jewish. They're anti-Semitic and they're very racist. And they're not alone. There are other laws that are on the books in the state of Texas that do not make sense from any actual viable perspective, but are part of a long-term pattern of racialization of processes as part of some sort of, I understand it to be, constitutional violation concerning the preclusion on privileging any specific sect, and a form potentially of an unconstitutional religious test. And thus far, those laws have not been taken off the books, while other laws have attempted to be put into effect in the last 3 years, even though there has been a constitutional challenge to not only the pre existing laws, but laws that were attempted for implementation in 2017. And amongst these unconstitutional laws is perhaps a means by which the state of Texas, or those acting as if they are entitled to misrepresent themselves as state actors and hence aid and abet acts of sedition in the United States, have been engaged in these protracted processes of very racist activity that's unconstitutional and very anti Semitic activity that's unconstitutional. We are also dealing with the fact that prior to my assumption of the role, that alleged officials in the state of Texas, along with alleged officials in other states of the United States, engaged in state compacts, including with foreign nations in manners that themselves are unconstitutional. Now, all of these issues are ones that I am attempting to work on, but what I'm very concerned about is just last night, there was an alert that this person's taxes were being disabused in acts of extortion and perhaps even being used in acts of money laundering that may be connected to acts of terrorism. And today, there's an announcement that has not been confirmed that two heads of state, or alleged heads of state, are attempting to have a phone correspondence. Now, this has already been identified. There have been at least 3 times when alleged teleconferencing, especially involving one of these heads of state and or official activities involving this head of state, have been disabused and have been used to traffic this person and torture this person. As a matter of fact, just last night, there was evaluation of materials concerning the specific processes whereby this can occur. And I understand that regardless of who thinks they're entitled to do whatever it is they think they're entitled to do, this has been something that has been very protracted and going on for a long time. I'm looking right now at the tax record. Exactly 10 days ago today, the LLC of concern and the individual associated with the LLC of concern paid on a tax bill that was alleged to have been sent by the IRS. The problem is There's no record of it posting. As a matter of fact, right now, the IRS website still has this very cryptic language about how it eliminated your expected refund and resulted in a balance that just so happens to be the exact amount of money that, while it doesn't seem very significant, is a part of a metric scheme that has been extorting this person for going on now 5 years. And in the course of that has been covering up for this person's efforts to try to report on acts of terrorism that were financed after a bank account was set up at a major banking institution who refused to investigate her claims that her account was being used to finance acts of terrorism. Not so ironically, just this morning, there has been information, though it has not been confirmed yet, but I am concerned that it is accurate, that there was another act of terrorism that fits the same pattern. The same pattern. And again, is connected to a number of options that are repeatedly and routinely set up for execution on moments like that. Now, I'm letting you know this because I would take these concerns from anybody very seriously. These are not only national security matters, these are international security matters. They're human rights abuses, but more than that, they're crimes against humanity. Nobody has the right to torture people using tax policy and play some cryptic little game about messing with payments and postings just so that they can attempt to extort them into acquiescing to a usurpation of power and or to trying to compel them to agree to engage in illicit or even terrorist activity. And that's what this is. Now, I know this, and I'm going to conduct my business as I need to today. But I'm letting you know that if you're in the process right now yourself of attempting to deal with your tax efforts and something like this happens, you should know that you're under absolutely no expectation to concede to these extortionists. And if you're somebody that understands their accounts and assets have been illegally hijacked, even if it's somebody claiming to be the president, whether it's of the United States or another country, you're under no obligation to acknowledge their authority, especially if they refuse to actually confirm that the systems in which they're engaged are doing their job. There's no legitimate reason why this is happening. And I'm very concerned that there might even be an indicator that what they're trying to do is kick this back to a local situation that is not appropriate either. Right? So don't be concerned on one hand, but know that this is a very critical situation. It's unacceptable. If you had any reason as a head of state or alleged head of state to have anything to do with me or my constituents, you would talk to me, especially if they come to me and they tell me that they understand some other person who's in charge of another country is consistently involved in transactions based upon their stolen identity, their stolen assets, and acts of actual torture. It's not acceptable. And this is one of the reasons why, unfortunately, we're in a very critical situation where we have to deal with the fact that individuals who engaged in a protracted organized crime campaign infiltrated the federal government and were aided and abetted by alleged state actors in state governments in order to try to consolidate power and exploit and extort us into cooperation. We're not cooperating. That's not going to happen. If they do insist on moving forward with this call, my constituents and me have absolutely no responsibility for what results from it. And if they attempt to threaten us, we are entitled to use all means necessary as a response.